All right, the now infamous Clinton dirty dossier was the single key piece of evidence that was used in 4 FISA applications by the FBI in order to spy on Trump campaign associate and, of course, the president-elect and now the president, Donald Trump. Without the dossier, there would be no FISA warrant against Carter Page. He will join us in a few minutes. This is an irrefutable fact. And, of course, we all know that this dirty dossier was created by a former foreign spy, Christopher Steele, who ultimately really was paid by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, all to dig up dirt and lies on Donald Trump. In other words, it was political op research filled with all things Russian lies that even Steele himself has admitted was totally unverified and uncorroborated. And he even said, at best, it was raw intelligence and only had a 50-50 chance of being true, most of which has now been totally debunked. And yet it was passed off to you, the American people, and FISA court judges as real, credible evidence by top FBI, DOJ officials to obtain the FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign associate at the height of a presidential election in 2016. This is a national disgrace. This is an abhorrent abuse of power and very dangerous to our constitutional republic, all in an attempt to turn the full force of your government against one person and, of course, the people that support him, Donald Trump, with a vengeance. And this, by the way, all after top officials literally rigged the investigation to save Hillary Clinton from certain indictments, warranted indictments, necessary indictments, if we have equal justice under the law and equal application of our laws. So tonight, it's time we call on everybody to demand the release of all 589 pages of these FISA documents, unredact everything possible, and, of course, our God-given rights as Americans are now on the line here if we are to remain a free society. Now, the mainstream media, filled with all opinion. There's no journalism on these so-called news channels. They're supposed to be investigating our government, holding them accountable, and they're nowhere to be found. The biggest story in their lives, they've totally missed it. And meanwhile, everything we've been reporting for well over a year has now been confirmed for you. Instead, you've got the media carrying water for their beloved Barack Obama. In other words, finishing the job. They did 8 consecutive years of kissing his ass. Why should they stop now? And as we speak, they are in full-on freak-out mode that several former high-ranking deep state government bureaucrats, all who propagated these Russian lies, found in Hillary's bought and paid-for dossier, might actually lose their precious security clearances. So this week, rightly, the Trump administration announced it was literally looking to strip top secret government access from all those deep state actors you see on your screen, including Clapper and Brennan and Rice, Michael Hayden, and James Comey and Andrew McCabe. And now, predictably, Democrats and the media, they're once again peddling this move from President Trump as another, oh my gosh, earth-shattering, feign outrage moment, an unprecedented abuse of power. In other words, their typical daily Donald Trump freak-out. We've got the video proof. Take a look.
The president wants to silence his critics, period. And maybe he thinks this is a way to do it. Maybe he can say, well, they don't know what they're talking about if they don't have clearance anymore.
The idea that the president would be revoking security clearance, not based on wrongdoing, just based on words, is shameful.
Well, but I'm not comfortable with vindictiveness. Because to me, that's very dictator.
Well, that's his middle name.
He represents the office of the presidency of the United States. This threat sounds more like he leads Turkey or the Philippines, not like he leads the United States of America.
Let's be honest what this is about, Willie. This is an abuse of executive power. This is Erdogan's Turkey. This is not what the United States of America should be.
This is so extraordinary. The last thing you want in intelligence is partisanship.
Make no mistake, that's the only thing this is about, is a cowardly action of someone who is afraid of criticism.
By the way, the last guy's the biggest liar in the country. Did it ever occur to these people why a former official no longer employed by the government would still have top secret clearance? They supposedly care so much about the dangers of Russia. Hillary Clinton paid for these Russian lies in what is nothing but a disinformation propaganda campaign to manipulate the minds of the American people and steal an election. And the deep state helped her every single step of the way. Is that not abuse of power? You don't see the danger in this? And then you're seeing the media, the Democrats, sticking up for the most corrupt people, their swamp friends that abuse the power that we gave them, we the people. For example, one-time CIA Director John Brennan hates Donald Trump. He's allowed to. He's the former communist. How he ever became the CIA director is unbelievable to me. He's also currently a paid hack over at Conspiracy TV, MSNBC, which is so appropriate. But during his time as the CIA director, Brennan actually leaked the contents of this dossier before the election to then Senator Harry Reid, who then subsequently alerted the public in an open letter to James Comey. Really? The CIA director? Sounds like Pravda. Sounds like the KGB. After stepping down as CIA director, John Brennan took all of his hatred publicly on cable news, getting paid, even, which is okay, even calling the sitting president of the United States a traitor? Really? This guy who leaked the Russian lies. What's this?
I think there's a big question, first of all, in terms of those who are on Mr. Trump's national security team, whether they can continue to serve in good conscience an individual who basically betrayed his nation. What Mr. Trump did yesterday was to betray the women and men of the FBI, the CIA, NSA, and others, and to betray the American public. And that's why I use the term that this is nothing short of treasonous, because it is a betrayal of the nation. He is giving aid and comfort to the enemy, and it needs to stop. And Mr. Trump needs to understand that there are going to be consequences for him, too.
The press needs to report what we're going to put on the screen. It says, this is CIA policy. In the case of former directors, the agency holds their security clearance and renews it every 5 years for the rest of their lives. However, that requires former CIA directors to behave like current CIA employees. Now, what you just saw, does that seem like the behavior of a current CIA employee saying what he just said, calling the president of the United States a traitor? And this no way undermines the CIA's mission? Really? What about him politicizing intelligence as an employee of NBC? That's pretty acceptable for a current CIA employee? I don't think so. And that brings us to the well-known leaker and liar himself, James Clapper. Remember, he's the former director of national intelligence, widely believed to have leaked details of the infamous dossier to CNN, where he's now employed. Fake news. And yet CNN just can't imagine why such an honorable person like him would lose his security clearance. Let's take a look.
CNN national security analyst James Clapper. And given the partisan attacks on him, I just want to take a moment and walk you through his ample nonpartisan resume. He served as director of national intelligence during the Obama administration. Before that, as director of the Defense Intelligence Agency under the first President Bush and Bill Clinton. General Clapper joined the Air Force in 1963, served 2 tours of combat during the Vietnam War, is the recipient of an Air Force Distinguished Service Medal, 2 Defense Distinguished Service Medals, and 3 Distinguished Service Medals for national intelligence.
Okay, Anderson, it was James Clapper who issued a directive that, quote, in case you want to do some real research and news on your station, when it is determined that access to classified information is no longer required, the department or agency shall terminate such access and debrief the individual. Oh, that's James Clapper's signature. He signed that in 2013. Amazing piece of information. It was Clapper who was at the center of the Obama administration's effort to scrub the clearance list in order to avoid leaking. But of course, no media meltdown over that action. And as we stated, it was James Clapper who likely leaked the classified information to the media in order to, rig the election years after he authored and signed that, quote, memo. Unauthorized disclosures, he said, of classified information, including leaks of classified information to the media, endanger vital intelligence sources and methods, and damage international relationships. Aggressive action is required to better equip the United States government elements to prevent unauthorized disclosures. So it's clear that people like Clapper and Brennan and many other deep state sycophants, they should in no way, none of them, have any access to our government's secrets. As a matter of fact, they ought to all be under investigation because their bias is so abusive, clouded their judgment. They're the ones that stomped on the rights of the American people. They're the ones that tried to propagandize, disinform the American people, all to affect an election. And to this day, they still are. And to this day, breaking their own government policies that they signed off on. Every American tonight, you need to demand that they not only lose their special government privileges, but they need to be held accountable for their blatant abuse of power. By the way, Robert Mueller, are you watching? Do you have your people watching? Because this is your Russia collusion story. And by the way, Jeff Sessions, where are you? Has anyone seen you except for school children? All right, let's shift gears. Let's turn our attention to the hostile regime of Iran. Over the weekend, the president issued a stern warning to the rogue state, tweeting, quote, to the president of Iran, Rouhani. He said, never, ever threaten the U.S. again, or you will suffer consequences the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious. Now, per usual, this tweet set off, yes, predictable, widespread, breathless panic from your left-wing media. Shocking. Take a look.
He criticized several times Barack Obama and said, you just wait. He's going to start a war with Iran if it feels like he's on the political ropes. And so that's in his head.
With any previous president, if you'd woken up to this all-caps tweet threatening war with Iran, you'd think he probably belongs in a padded cell. But with Trump, this is kind of business as normal.
Russia just dominated the conversation for the whole week, and he was hurting. So let's distract with a new topic. And in this case, it's Iran. Let's find a new foil that maybe all of us will focus on, and we'll forget that there was a summit in Helsinki last week.
But this strengthens them for Rouhani, for the foreign minister. This makes them look tough. People are rallying around them. So this is actually strengthening the regime.
I mean, it is a classic move by President Trump to try to distract. And we've seen this time and time again. When things aren't going well, you lob a Molotov cocktail in one corner of the room, and everyone runs over there. And
now, remember, these are the same people claiming that Trump was going to cause World War III because of his tough rhetoric against Kim Jong-un, little rocket man, fire and fury, our button's bigger than yours and works. Now, despite the never-ending panic from his critics, President Trump continued his tough talk against the hostile Iranian regime. Take a look.
I withdrew the United States from the horrible, one-sided Iran nuclear deal. And Iran is not the same country anymore. That I can say. And we'll see what happens. But we're ready to make a real deal, not the deal that was done by the previous administration, which was a disaster.
All right, someone needs to remind the corrupt media Obama is gone, and the era of apology tours and appeasement is now over. No longer will the United States of America sit idly by as the Iranian regime is fighting proxy wars, chanting death to America, disrupting the entire Middle East, and funding terrorism throughout the world. And, of course, aggressively pursuing nuclear weapons and threatening all of our allies and this country. America must never allow these lunatics to develop nuclear weapons. All options must always remain on the table. And while the president puts Iran on notice, he is also focusing on a critical part of our national security right here at home. Earlier today, he had very tough words for Democrats that literally want to eliminate ICE. In other words, protection of our southern borders, wide open borders. Are they serious? Take a look.
But Democratic politicians want to abolish ICE. They want to see open borders. Can you imagine? You know, every once in a while you'll hear something, and usually you understand, like in deal making, you always have to understand the other side. When you hear open borders, when you hear get rid of ICE, when you hear some of the things that they're proposing, it's like you can't even understand it. Can you imagine? Open borders, you'd have millions of people pouring into our country. Millions and millions of people. Many people that you don't want in our country. but you would have millions of people pouring into our country. The crime would be unbelievable. And they want to get rid of the crime fighter on top of everything else. Open the border and get rid of your crime fighters. You don't understand it. Nobody understands it.
All right, with the 2018 midterms just a few short months away, it's clear that Democrats in this country have no real plan to improve America. Instead, they want to regain power in order to take more and more money. In other words, they want their crumbs back. They want to take back the Trump tax cuts. They want to impeach President Trump. They want to preserve the disaster of Obamacare, open borders, stop Kavanaugh, and we have a new addition to our list. They want to kill off all these legitimate investigations into what really happened during the 2016 election, the Obama-era deep state corruption, the rigging of an election, the rigging of an investigation. Now, tonight, we have bad news for the Democrats and everyone else actively working against President Trump. Look at this Gallup poll. President Trump just hit the highest approval rating of his presidency, and according to The Hill, 3/4 of Americans will never vote for a socialist. It should be 99.9%, but we'll get to that another night. I'll say it again. This is the most important midterm elections in our lifetime. Make your voices heard. The future of this country, our rights and future as a constitutional republic are at stake.